My name is Maren Cole. I am 35 years old, and I run events for a hotel group that hosts weddings, corporate galas, charity dinners, and family disasters dressed up as celebrations. I know the difference between a guest, a host, and a person everyone expects to become the host once the bill arrives. That difference saved me. 3 months ago, my mother called me after 4 years of silence and asked if I would come to my brother's engagement dinner. She said it would be small. She said it would be healing. She said my father had been missing me. My brother Ethan wanted to start fresh, and his fiancé's family was very traditional, so everyone needed to look united. I should have asked what united was going to cost. I did not. I drove 50 minutes to a private dining club called the Rosemont, walked through the doors in a navy dress and low heels, and found 21 people seated under chandeliers with champagne already poured, seafood towers on ice, and a printed menu that said, "Ethan and Laurel, a family celebration." My mother kissed my cheek like she had not ignored every birthday message I sent for 4 years. My father hugged me with one arm while checking who was watching. And my brother Ethan, the golden child who had not spoken to me since I refused to fund his failed brewery, smiled across the table and said, "There she is, the responsible one." I sat down. I ordered sparkling water. I did not touch the champagne. 1 hour later, my father tapped his knife against his glass, thanked everyone for coming, then turned to me in front of both families and said, "Maren, why don't you take care of tonight? Consider it your wedding gift." 21 faces turned toward me. The table was covered in oysters, ribeye, scallops, lamb, truffle pasta, 2 bottles of vintage champagne, and enough guilt to feed a family for another decade. My mother lowered her voice and whispered, "Please don't embarrass us." She thought that sentence still worked. What she did not know was that 15 minutes earlier, I had stepped away, found the banquet captain, and asked 2 quiet questions. Who signed the private dining agreement? And whose card is legally attached to the room minimum? The answer was my father. So when he smiled at me and waited for me to pull out my wallet, I smiled back and said, "Dad, I think the host should take care of his own event." Then the banquet captain arrived with the contract, and the room learned exactly who had been lying. Before I tell you what happened at that table, I need to explain how I became the family's emergency exit. I grew up in Fairview, North Carolina, in a house where love and money were always tangled together. My father, Maren Cole, owned a flooring company that did well when the economy was good and badly when it was not. My mother, Patricia, worked part-time at a dental office and full-time managing everyone's feelings except mine. My younger brother Ethan was born charming. That is the nicest way I can say it. He had blonde hair, a crooked smile, and the ability to make adults forgive him before they even knew what he had done. When he crashed my mother's car at 17, she said he was under pressure from school. When he dropped out of community college after 6 weeks, Dad said college was not for everyone. When he borrowed money and forgot to repay it, everyone called him optimistic. When I made one mistake, my mother called it a pattern. I was the oldest daughter, the useful one, the calm one, the one who could be trusted with a grocery list, a crying cousin, a broken dishwasher, a late mortgage notice, or a family secret that needed carrying quietly. By 16, I was already working weekends at a banquet hall outside Asheville, carrying trays at weddings and learning how adults behaved when music, alcohol, and unpaid bills shared a room. I learned quickly that the person making the loudest toast was not always the person paying for the open bar. At 17, I paid the electric bill for the first time. Not because my parents asked directly. They never began directly. My mother left the envelope on the counter, sighed loudly, and said, "I just don't know what we're going to do." My father sat in the living room, pretending not to hear. Ethan was in the driveway with friends, laughing over a speaker I had bought him for Christmas. I had $486 in my checking account from working 3 banquet shifts and 1 Sunday brunch. The bill was $218. I paid it. Mom cried and called me an angel. Dad said he would pay me back Friday. He did not. That was the first time I learned what praise could cost. By 19, I was covering groceries when Dad's clients paid late. By 21, I was helping Ethan with car insurance because he had one rough month. By 24, I had paid for half his trade school deposit, which he lost when he stopped attending. By 27, I had a spreadsheet called Family Help. I wish I were joking. Date, amount, reason, promised repayment, actual repayment. The last column was almost always blank. I did not keep the spreadsheet for revenge. I kept it because numbers were the only place my memory could go without being accused of having an attitude. When I brought up money, Mom would say, "Maren, family doesn't keep score." But that was not true. My family kept score constantly. They just called it love when I was losing. I moved into hospitality because chaos made sense to me. Banquets, events, restaurant service, hotel operations, all of it had rules. A wedding with 300 guests and a bride crying in the bathroom was still easier to manage than a family dinner where my mother had decided silence meant agreement. At work, if someone wanted a ballroom, they signed a contract. If someone wanted an open bar, they accepted a minimum. If someone exceeded the minimum, they paid. There were no sad eyes, no "after everything we've done for you," no cousins saying you should help because you were doing well. There were signatures. By 31, I was director of private events for Hawthorne Hospitality, overseeing 7 venues across 2 states. I was not rich, but I was stable. I had a small townhouse, no debt except my mortgage, and a savings account my mother once called selfish money because I would not use it to rescue Ethan. The final break happened over Ethan's brewery. He was 30 at the time and engaged to a different dream every 6 months. Food truck, podcast studio, custom sneakers, lawn care app, crypto vending machine. Then came the brewery. Oak Barrel Brewing. He had a logo before he had a lease, a slogan before he had a business plan, a merchandise order before he had permits. He called me on a Tuesday and asked if I could meet him and Dad at a bank. Just to talk, he said. I knew what that meant. The banker slid a folder across the desk. Ethan needed a co-signer for a $90,000 small business loan. Dad could not qualify because his flooring company had 2 outstanding lines of credit and late tax filings. Mom had credit cards I was not supposed to know about. So everyone looked at me. I opened the folder and read, "Projected first-year revenue, unrealistic. Equipment costs, underquoted. Insurance, missing. Payroll, missing. Lease terms, not attached." I closed the folder and said, "No." Ethan laughed because he thought I was starting a negotiation. Dad's face hardened. "Mom, who had come even though she said she was only there for moral support, whispered, "Maren, this is your brother's future. No, this is a loan he can't repay." Ethan leaned back. "You don't even believe in me." "I believe you need a real plan before you borrow $90,000. Dad slammed his palm on the conference table. The banker flinched. "You always do this," Dad said. "You sit there with your little spreadsheets and make everyone feel stupid." "I'm trying to keep him from going bankrupt." Mom's eyes filled with tears, right on schedule. "So your answer is no?" "My answer is no." Ethan stood. "You know what? Keep your money. You love it more than us anyway." That sentence became the family story. Maren chose money. Maren crushed Ethan's dream. Maren humiliated Dad at the bank. Maren thinks she's better than everyone because she wears a blazer and knows what EBITDA means. 3 weeks later, I was removed from the family group chat. No announcement, no argument, just silence. 4 years of it. At first, I tried to repair it. I sent birthday cards. Mom did not respond. I texted Dad on Father's Day. Delivered. No reply. I mailed Ethan a gift card when I heard through a cousin that he had started working construction again. It came back with a sticky note on the envelope. "We don't need charity." I put the note in a drawer. Then I went to therapy. My therapist, Dr. Lane, was a woman with short gray hair, calm eyes, and the annoying habit of waiting after I said something too polished. One afternoon I told her, "I just don't understand how they could cut me off after everything I did." She asked, "What did you think everything bought you?" I hated that question, because the answer was ugly. I thought it bought me a place, a chair, a phone call, a mother who answered, a father who looked at me with pride instead of calculation, a brother who remembered my help without needing more of it. I had not been giving out of pure love. I had been paying membership dues. And when I stopped paying, they canceled the membership. That realization did not make me angry at first. It made me ashamed. Then, slowly, it made me free. The invitation came on a Monday morning while I was reviewing a wedding floor plan. My phone buzzed with a number I had not seen in almost 2 years. Mom. I stared at it until the call went to voicemail. Then she texted, "Maren, sweetheart, Ethan is engaged. Her name is Laurel. We're having a small dinner at the Rosemont next Thursday. Your father and I think it is time to put the past behind us. Ethan wants you there. We all do." A second message arrived before I could breathe. Family should be together for moments like this. I read both messages 3 times. No apology. No mention of the bank. No mention of 4 years. Just a door opened slightly, with a hook behind it. I almost ignored it. Then a third message came. "Just us and Laurel's parents. Nothing big. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." That line did it. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Not for me. For them. At lunch, I showed the messages to my assistant, Tessa, who had watched me run events for 6 years and knew when my voice became too even. She read the screen and said, "Absolutely not." "My brother is getting married." "Your brother tried to make you co-sign a loan he couldn't repay." That was 4 years ago. And apparently 4 years wasn't enough time to write the word sorry. I knew she was right. But family wounds do not follow logic. They follow old hallways, old smells, old birthdays, the sound of your mother saying "sweetheart" like it still means something. I told myself I was not going for them. I was going for information. One dinner. No money. No rescuing. If it became a trap, I would leave. I wrote those words in my notes app. One dinner, no money, no rescuing. Then I accepted. The Rosemont was a private dining club on the edge of Charlotte, inside a renovated bank building with marble floors, velvet booths, and lighting designed to make everyone look like they owned stock in something. I had done events there twice, not with Hawthorne, but industry events. I knew their service standards. I knew their contract language. I knew private dining rooms required deposits and host cards on file. That detail would matter. I arrived at 6:50 for a 7 o'clock dinner. The parking lot told me my mother had lied before I even opened the door. Dad's black truck. Mom's white SUV. Ethan's lifted Jeep. Aunt Camille's Lexus. Uncle Rob's minivan. Cousin Dean's motorcycle. 2 cars I recognized from my mother's church. Another with a florist sticker on the back window. And a black Mercedes I guessed belonged to Laurel's family. Small dinner. Mom had written, "Just us and Laurel's parents." There were at least 12 cars. I sat in my own car for a full minute with one hand on the door handle. 4 years ago, I would have walked in already apologizing for being late, even though I was early. That night, I looked at my phone. One dinner, no money, no rescuing. Then I walked inside. The hostess smiled. "Cole party?" "Yes." "They're in the Magnolia Room." Of course they were. Even the room name sounded like a warning. She led me through the dining room toward a set of double doors. I could hear laughter before they opened. Loud, loose, practiced laughter. The kind people use when they are trying to prove nothing is wrong. Inside, 21 people sat around a long table. Champagne flutes. Seafood towers. Cheese boards. Candles. A printed menu with Ethan and Laurel's names. And at the far end, one empty chair. Mine. My mother stood up. "There she is." The room turned. I felt every face land on me. Dad rose halfway, then seemed to remember we were supposed to be reconciled and stood fully. Ethan gave a little wave without getting up. Laurel, a pretty woman with auburn hair and careful posture, smiled nervously. Her parents sat beside her, dressed like people who still believed dinner invitations came with honest terms. My mother hugged me too tightly. "You look wonderful," she said. "You said it was small." She laughed softly. "It just grew. You know how family is." Yes, I did. I sat in the empty chair. A server approached with champagne. I covered the glass with my hand. "Sparkling water, please." Ethan snorted, still the responsible one. I looked at him. Still the same jokes? His smile tightened. The server, a woman named Cassie, according to her name tag, brought my water with lime. She moved like someone experienced enough to know which table would be a problem before the appetizers cleared. When she leaned down to place the glass, she murmured, "Would you like anything else for now?" "Just this." She nodded. There was sympathy in her face. Not pity. Recognition. The table was already deep into ordering. Oysters, shrimp, lobster toast, filet, duck, sea bass, lamb, 2 bottles of champagne I knew retailed above $300 each. My father ordered a third before the first course ended. He lifted the bottle toward me. "Come on, Maren, celebrate with us." "I am." "With water?" "With boundaries." The word landed awkwardly. Mom laughed too loudly. "She's joking." I was not. For the first 30 minutes, the dinner performed exactly the way my family performs closeness when there are witnesses. Aunt Camille said she had prayed for me. Uncle Rob said it was good to see me back where I belonged. Cousin Dean asked if I still did weddings, as if I pinned flowers to chairs instead of managing 7 venues and a staff of 140. Laurel's mother, to her credit, asked me what I actually did. I run private events and food service operations for Hawthorne Hospitality. I said, contracts, staffing, budgets, vendor management, guest experience, all of it. Laurel's father smiled. That sounds demanding. It is. My father leaned in. She's always been good with details. There was pride in his voice. For half a second, I wanted to believe it. Then he added, sometimes too good. She can spreadsheet the fun out of anything. The table laughed. There it was. The old pattern. Praise with a hook. I took a sip of water and said nothing. Ethan was happier than I remembered. Or, at least, louder. He told Laurel's family about his construction work, about a supervisor who basically lets him run jobs, about his plan to start flipping houses after the wedding. Laurel looked at him like she was trying to believe every word. My mother watched her with approval. A woman marrying into our family had one job: admire the performance. I excused myself before the entrees arrived. Not because I needed the restroom, because I needed the truth. The hallway outside the Magnolia Room led to the service station. Cassie was there, entering an order. Beside her stood a banquet captain in a charcoal suit, name tag, Julian. I approached with the smile I use when a bride's uncle has found the bar before the ceremony. Julian? He looked up. Yes, ma'am? I work in private events. I'm going to ask this very plainly. Who is listed as the host on the Magnolia Room contract? His expression changed. Not alarmed. Professional. May I ask your name? Maren Cole? He checked the tablet. The event is under Maren Cole. My father. And the card on file. Also Maren Cole. Deposit. Paid at booking. Room minimum? $3,000 before tax and gratuity. I looked toward the closed doors. They had already blown past that before my water arrived. Julian lowered his voice. Is there a concern? Yes, I said. I was invited under false pretenses, and I suspect my family intends to redirect the check to me at the end of the meal. Cassie looked down at the tablet, then at me. Julian's jaw moved once. Good managers do not react loudly. They file information quickly. I continued. Please keep my items on a separate check. Sparkling water only. Add 30% gratuity to mine. The main check should go to the contracted host. Julian nodded. Understood. If anyone claims I agreed to cover the event, I did not. I have not signed anything. No signature, no card, no authorization, Julian said. Clear. That was when Cassie spoke quietly. He told me earlier you'd be handling the final balance. Of course he had. I almost smiled. Thank you for telling me. I paid my water bill right there at the service station. $7 sparkling water, $2.10 gratuity. I added $100 cash from my wallet and handed it to Cassie. She blinked. "Ma'am, that's too much." "No," I said. "It's not." Then I returned to the table. Entrée had arrived. The table looked like a commercial for consequences. Lamb racks, fillets, lobster risotto, truffle fries, scallops, red wine, champagne, and my brother, at the center of it all, telling a story about how he and Laurel had toured a wedding venue that morning. "It's perfect," Laurel said softly. "The garden is beautiful." My mother clapped her hands. "And the ballroom fits 200. I looked at Ethan. 200? He shrugged. "Laurel has a big family." Laurel's father gave a polite cough. "We're still reviewing budget," he said. Mom waved a hand. "Weddings only happen once." That was not true in our family. Bad decisions happened repeatedly. Ethan looked at me across the table. "You'd love the venue. Mayor, very organized, very you." "I'm sure." "You should talk to them. Maybe you could get us a discount." There it was. A small test before the larger ask. I don't work there. "But you know people." "I know a lot of people. That doesn't mean I ask them for favors." Dad chuckled. Still tough. "No, just clear?" Laurel looked between us. I saw something flicker in her face. Concern, maybe, or recognition. The second wave came during dessert. Mom mentioned honeymoon costs. Aunt Camille mentioned how expensive everything had become. Dad said young couples needed support. Ethan said nothing, which meant he knew exactly where this was going and had decided silence would keep his hands clean. Then Laurel's mother said, "We are happy to contribute what we discussed." The room paused. My mother's smile froze. Laurel's father added, "Half the venue deposit, as agreed." As agreed. Interesting. My parents had been making promises on both sides. Dad cleared his throat. "Of course. We appreciate that." Then he looked at me. I saw the moment arrive. He tapped his knife against his water glass. The table quieted. "I want to say something," he began. "Tonight means a lot to Patricia and me. Having everyone here, having Maren back, seeing Ethan and Laurel start their life." My mother put a hand over her heart. Dad continued, "Family is not perfect. We have disagreements. We have hurt. But at the end of the day, family shows up." He looked directly at me. "And family helps." My stomach went calm. Not tight. Calm. The way a ballroom feels 5 minutes before doors open. He smiled. "Maren, why don't you take care of tonight? Consider it your wedding gift." There it was. The ask. Not in private. Not honestly. In front of 21 people, 2 families, a fiancé, and a table full of food he had ordered. My mother leaned close and whispered, "Please don't embarrass us." I looked at her. 4 years of silence. No apology. No birthday call. No Christmas. No, we were wrong. Just an event minimum with my name penciled in at the end. I placed my napkin on the table. "Dad," I said, "are you asking me to pay for this dinner?" His smile held. "I'm saying it would mean a lot." "To who?" "Maren." "No, to who?" The table went quiet. Ethan shifted. Laurel stopped breathing for a second. Dad's voice lowered. Don't do this. Do what? I make it ugly. I looked at the table. Oysters, champagne, lamb, flowers, printed menus. You made it expensive first. A cousin snorted, then covered it with a cough. Dad's face reddened. Mom whispered, Maren, please. I turned to her. You said it was small. It grew. You said it was a fresh start. It is. No, it's a bill with candles. The room went completely still. Then Julian entered. Perfect timing. He carried a black check presenter and a thin folder. He walked past me, past Ethan, past Laurel's parents, and placed both directly in front of my father. Mr. Cole, he said, here is the final balance for the Magnolia Room, along with a copy of the signed private dining agreement. Dad stared at the folder. My mother's hand went tight around her napkin. Ethan muttered, What the hell? Julian remained calm. The agreement lists you as host, sir. Dad laughed once. There's been a misunderstanding. Julian nodded politely. The signed contract is attached. Laurel's father leaned forward. Raymond, you signed the host agreement? Dad did not answer. I did. Yes, he did. My father looked at me like I had slapped him. But I had not. I had only stepped out of the way of his own signature. Dad opened the folder. He looked at the total. I watched the number hit him. Not because I saw it, but because his face changed the way faces change when performance meets math. $4,986 before additional gratuity. A family dinner priced like a used car down payment. He closed the folder too quickly. I'll handle it, he said. Mom's eyes widened. Raymond, I said I'll handle it. He took out a card. Julian ran it. The room pretended not to wait. I took a sip of sparkling water I had already paid for. Julian returned. Quietly. I'm sorry, sir. The card was declined. The word declined moved through the table like spilled wine. My father's smile stayed for one extra second after his dignity left. Run it again. Julian did. It declined again. Dad tried another card. Then another. The third went through for part of the amount, then stopped at the limit. Julian leaned in and said, still professional, there is a remaining balance of $3,212. Laurel's mother looked at my mother. Laurel looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at me. That was the part that made something inside me go cold. Even after everything, his first instinct was still to look at me. I set down my glass. No. I said it before anyone asked. One word. Soft. Clear. My mother's eyes filled. Maren. No. Dad's voice turned sharp. You're really going to sit there and watch your father be humiliated? I watched you invite me here to be used. That is not what this is. Then what is it? Silence. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Not to record. Not to threaten. To read. Your message said just us and Laurel's parents. Nothing big. Mom's face paled. The event contract says 21 guests, preset menu, premium beverage package, signed by Maren Cole 6 days ago. Laurel's father closed his eyes briefly. Laurel whispered, Ethan. Ethan said, I didn't know it was this bad. I looked at him. You knew they wanted me to pay. He looked away. That was enough. I turned back to Dad. If you had called me and said, Maren, I'm in financial trouble. Can you sit down with me and help me figure out a plan? I might have said yes. Dad looked up. But you didn't want help. You wanted a public trap. You wanted me cornered, embarrassed, and too polite to refuse. Mom started crying then. The table knew what kind. So did I. After everything we did for you, she said. I almost smiled from exhaustion. What did you do for me in the last 4 years? She covered her mouth. No answer. So I gave the answer for her. You removed me from the family chat. You ignored my birthday cards. You let everyone say I destroyed Ethan's dream because I wouldn't sign a $90,000 loan without a business plan. You called silence peace and then invited me back when a bill needed paying. Aunt Camille whispered, Maren, that's enough. I turned to her. No, Aunt Camille, enough was 4 years ago. The room shifted again. Laurel stood. Her chair moved back softly. She took off her engagement ring. Not dramatically. Not like a movie. Like a woman removing something that had suddenly become heavier than it looked. She placed it beside Ethan's dessert plate. Laurel, Ethan said. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Did you know? He hesitated. That hesitation ended the engagement before any answer could. Laurel's father stood next. We will pay for our portion, he said to Julian. Our 4 seats, nothing more. Julian nodded. Dad looked smaller by the second. Ethan pushed his chair back. This is insane. You're all acting like I planned this. Laurel said, You let it happen. That sentence landed harder than shouting would have. Because that was what my family did. They let things happen when stopping them would cost comfort. Ethan turned on me then. You happy now? You had to come in here and prove a point? I looked at my brother, the boy I had helped raise, the man who still believed consequences were things other people invented to hurt him. No, I said. I'm not happy. I'm done. I stood. Dad said, Maren, please, we're drowning. For 1 second, I saw him. The frightened man behind the angry father, the business owner with bad credit, the husband trying to keep appearances alive with a card that could not carry them anymore. I felt the old reflex. Fix it. Make it quiet. Pay whatever it costs. Then I heard Dr. Lane's voice. You are not required to drown because someone else refuses to stop drilling holes in the boat. I took a breath. Then stop ordering champagne and call a financial counselor. He flinched. I put my purse over my shoulder. I will pay for a 1-hour consultation with a debt counselor. I will not pay for this dinner. I will not pay for the wedding. I will not pay for Ethan's next dream. And I will not buy my way back into a family that only opens the door when it needs cash. Mom said, If you leave now, don't come back. I looked at her for a long moment. The threat was old. So old it had lost its teeth. I already didn't, I said. Then I walked out. Cassie caught me near the hallway. Ms. Cole? She handed me my water receipt. On the bottom, written in small handwriting, was a note. You were kind. Thank you. I folded it carefully and put it in my purse. Some receipts are worth keeping.
Yo.
The aftermath did not explode. It leaked. That is how family scandals work in towns where everyone knows someone who knows someone at the restaurant. By the next morning, 3 cousins had texted me. 2 accused me of humiliating my father. One asked if Ethan and Laurel were really over. Tessa brought coffee into my office and said, "You look like you survived a knife fight in business casual." Close. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, then said, "I'm proud of you." 3 words. No invoice attached. I cried in the supply closet 10 minutes later. Laurel emailed me 2 days after the dinner. The subject line was, "Thank you." She wrote that she had felt something was wrong for months. Ethan always had plans, but never numbers. My parents kept hinting that Maren was successful and generous. She had assumed that meant I was helping voluntarily. At the dinner, she understood. She called off the wedding. Not because of the bill alone, she said, because when the truth appeared, Ethan looked for someone else to pay it. That was the clearest sentence anyone wrote about my brother. Dad called 1 week later. I let it go to voicemail. His message was not an apology. It was a weather report of consequences. The remaining balance had been split between him and Ethan after Laurel's parents paid their share. Aunt Camille refused to contribute because, in her words, she didn't order the champagne. Uncle Rob paid for his own entrees and left angry. The Rosemont had banned Dad from future private reservations until the balance cleared. At the end, he said, "We need to talk about what you did." I deleted the voicemail. Not immediately. First, I played it for Dr. Lane. She asked, "What did you do?" I said, "I let the host pay for his event." She smiled. "Sounds accurate." 2 weeks later, Mom sent a letter. Handwritten, 3 pages. The first page was about her pain. The second was about Dad's embarrassment. The third was about family unity. The word sorry did not appear once. I placed the letter in the same drawer as the returned gift card from Ethan years earlier. Then I added a new folder to my laptop. Not family help. I renamed that one Family History. The new folder was called Boundaries Kept. I put the dinner contract copy in it. My water receipt. Cassie's note. A screenshot of Mom's invitation saying small dinner. A screenshot of my own notes app from before I went. One dinner, no money, no rescuing. For years, I documented what I gave away. Now I document what I keep. Peace. Money. Time. Self-respect. Ethan texted once. "You ruined my life." I replied, "No, I stopped funding the version where you never had to build one." He did not answer. My father eventually met with a debt counselor. Not the one I offered to pay for. One from his bank, which meant he waited until a stranger with a letterhead told him what his daughter had been saying for years. The flooring company downsized. My mother took on more hours at the dental office. Ethan moved back into their guest room after Laurel left. None of that felt good. That is the truth. People think boundaries feel like victory. Sometimes they feel like standing outside in the cold with the right coat on, watching a house burn because you finally stopped running inside with buckets. You are warm. You are safe. And you are still sad about the fire. 6 months after the Rosemont dinner, I hosted a charity gala for a children's hospital at one of our venues. 300 guests. Silent auction. 5-course dinner. A donor tried to argue about the wine minimum. A board member's wife cried because the flowers were the wrong shade of cream. The keynote speaker got stuck in traffic. It was a normal night. At 10:40, after the last dessert plate cleared, Cassie appeared near the ballroom doors. The same Cassie from the Rosemont. She was wearing a server uniform, hair tied back, carrying a tray of champagne flutes. Maren? I recognized her immediately. She had started working for our hotel group 2 weeks earlier. I smiled. Cassie. She looked nervous. I didn't know you worked here. I do. She laughed softly. Good. I hoped I'd see you again. Why? She hesitated, then said, That night at the Rosemont, you were the first guest who treated me like I mattered while everyone else treated me like furniture. I did not know what to say. She continued, I quit 3 weeks later, applied here because I remembered the company name from your card. I had not given her a card. Then I remembered. My water receipt had the Hawthorne Hospitality logo because I used my corporate card by mistake and reimbursed it later. Sometimes the smallest records change the right life. Cassie became one of our best banquet captains within a year. I tell you that because not every consequence is punishment. Some consequences are doors. The last time I heard my mother's voice was on my birthday. A voicemail. Happy birthday, Maren. I hope you're happy with the life you chose. I listened once. Then I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and thought about the life I chose. A quiet townhouse. A job I earned. Friends who ask how I am before asking for favors. A savings account that is no longer an emergency fund for adults who will not budget. A phone that does not make me flinch every time it lights up. I was happy. Not loudly. Not perfectly. But honestly. So I texted back. Thank you. I am. She did not reply. That was answer enough. Here is what I learned from 21 seats, 1 water glass, and a contract my father forgot he signed. If someone invites you to heal but refuses to name the wound, check the bill. If someone says family helps family, but only one person ever helps, check the pattern. If someone needs an audience before they ask for money, they are not asking, they are cornering. And if you have spent years paying for peace, understand this. Peace bought with your silence is not peace. It is a subscription. You are allowed to cancel it. My family thought I walked into the Rosemont alone. They did not know I brought every version of myself they had used and ignored. The 17-year-old busser with sore feet. The 21-year-old paying the electric bill. The 27-year-old with a spreadsheet full of blank repayment columns. The 31-year-old removed from the family chat for saying no. And the 35-year-old woman who finally understood that love does not arrive as an invoice. That is my story. 1 engagement dinner. 21 seats. 1 contract. And 1 sparkling water check that proved I was never the host of everyone else's consequences.